Colonel Fraser, allow me to introduce our hostess, the inimitable...
Even in Washington, we've heard of Barb Wire. I hope you'll join us. You attract a very eclectic crowd.
It looks that way.
Rumor has it that you used to fight with the Resistance.
Shouldn't believe everything you hear. I'm neutral. I'm a businesswoman, Colonel.
Perhaps we can do business.
I can assure you, Barb has a very keen sense of commerce.
Then I'll get to the point. There's a fugitive, a trader at Steel Harbor. She intends to make a crossing into Canada with the help of some of the more disenchanted members of the citizenry.
Do I look disenchanted to you?
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. I'm your host Jordan, and with me today, well, of all the podcasts, in all the towns, in all the world, he walked into mine. It's Kumar.
Yeah, that hit early. I wasn't really, how early Casablanca was going to come up.
Right at the start.
Right at the start. Okay. So this week we're talking about Barb Wire from 1996. Pause the podcast.
Yes, so I say pause the podcast and go and watch Casablanca.
Yes. Well that was... Yeah, so if you've seen Casablanca, then this movie cannot be spoiled. Because it's already spoiled for you. Because you know everything that's going to happen in it. If you haven't seen Casablanca...
Please go watch Casablanca.
Yeah, just go
and don't
watch
this film.
Yeah, I guess that's about the best way to put it.
Yes.
Alright, so...
Jump right in. This is a Dark Horse comic.
It's a Dark Horse comic. Initially came out in 1994. It was part of a Dark Horse line called Comics Greatest World, right. Which was a line of superhero titles. I think there were two others that I know of. I don't know if there were more than that. There was one called X.
Okay.
About this, like, Batman-type dude. He looked like that on the cover. I never read one. And there was a character called Ghost.
Yes.
Which was this kind of ghostly woman carrying two pistols. And that one, I think, had a little bit more success. I think the others, Barbed Wire, lasted 9 issues. And then got canceled. And then I feel like Ghost had a little bit more.
Sure.
Maybe there was even a Hellboy crossover.
There was a Hellboy crossover with Ghost.
Yeah. But Comics Greatest World, apparently, now I don't know if this is true, the development started in 1990, and they were trying to cash in on the same boom that we talked about with Valiant Comics.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like, we got to get in on the superhero boom and get our issue 1s and 0s out there. And for whatever reason, it took a long time. I could have confirmed some of this, but I didn't. Because this was actually created by Chris Warner. I think we might have mentioned him in the Time Cop episode. I can't remember why his name would have come up in that, but anyway, he was the guy that hired me as a translator at Dark Horse.
Ah, yeah.
And
I'm pretty sure you did mention
he's now senior books editor. Or he was last time I spoke to him. He'd been promoted up, so I haven't worked with him in a very long time.
Yes, we would have talked about that in the mysterious context of how these films get made.
Yes,
there's something of a there was something of a pipeline.
Yes, something was going on. So
I mean, while we're on the topic, I've got it somewhere here. Let's see, Comics Greatest World, as you say, that's the name of the shared universe. Apparently, so the heads of the company at the time, Mike Richardson.
He's the head from day one.
And Todd Moyer.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
Is another person high up in the company, and they just have these properties that they want to put into production.
Right.
And it looks like they found a producer called Brad Wyman, who told them that Pamela Anderson was interested in acting in a film
in
like
a movie.
this.
Yeah. Okay.
And they pitched Barb Wire to her, and she loved it.
Okay.
And then it was off to the races.
Okay, so it was created by Chris Warner, but the comics were not. It was kind of a superhero work-for-hire situation, I guess. The writer was John Arcudi, who will come up again because he worked on The Mask. And the pencils on issue 1 was by somebody named Lee Moder. And the inks were by Ande Parks, writer of Ciudad. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And then in
Unbelievable. I missed that.
Yeah, and in the second issue it was the pencils were taken over by Dan Lawlis. They both have a drawing style kind of like Adam Hughes, if you know what Adam Hughes draws like. They're a bit like that.
Nope. I do a podcast about comic books and I don't know who that is.
The first issue had a badass cover by Adam Warren, where Barb Wire is on her motorbike pointing a gun backwards up at the camera, and there's this like perspective effect, so it looks really good. And she's saying, "Don't call me babe."
That's right.
And that's not...
That becomes the catchphrase of the character in the film.
That's not actually...
Well, she never utters that line again, as far as I could tell.
She doesn't say it in the comic, and in fact, in the omnibus version, which they reprinted, doesn't have that. It doesn't have a word balloon on it. Oddly, they removed it for whatever... Maybe to disassociate from the movie? I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Anyway, okay, so... We've got a bit of a valiant situation here, because we're dropped into the...
Yes.
So I think she had one appearance in some earlier comic or something, which is, for some reason, not in the omnibus version. But, I guess because it would be out of context and way too confusing, but...
And I think probably in this Comics Greatest World, or whatever Comics Greatest World, it's a similar situation to Valiant Universe. I think there's... Adventures are occurring involving the characters in other comics.
Yes.
Because it's quite disjointed, much like the Valiant comics were.
Yeah.
Except with less of the bullshit mythology and nonsense that...
there's because there's no time travel, immortality stuff. But, I mean, I read 3 issues, and I think there were probably about 20 characters introduced in 3 issues. Good guy teams, bad guy. These are superheroes, by the way. They've all got superheroes with superpowers and costumes and all sorts of stuff. And there's...
Well, I think some of them... a lot of them are gang leaders. And they seem to be...
They're gangs of superheroes. Yeah. Some work on the side. Like there's bad guys are the prime movers, and the good guys are the wolf gang.
Yep. But they're still gangs, street gangs, essentially, because this city is maybe run by the street gangs.
City, there's been some sort of riots. There's been some sort of dimensional thing, which I guess is what gave people their powers.
It's never explained.
It's not explained in these issues.
It's even worse than Valiant in that respect. I mean, well, Valiant, I think, went into a lot of detail about how people got their powers, and it was all mental.
Yes.
In this one, we're not getting we're not getting anything. We don't know.
No. And people are like, it's like you're dropped in the middle of a soap opera. Like, this dude's in a hospital, and it's like somehow Barb Wire put him in a hospital, and you're like, what?
Incendiary, or whatever his name is?
Ignition?
Ignition, that's it.
Yeah. So there's been some sort of riots, we learn early on.
It's a standard after the end Mad Max kind of.
Yeah, it's not that bad. There's just been riots.
I think it's got that feel. It feels. Yeah, it's maybe not quite.
It doesn't feel quite that. It doesn't feel. It just feels like there's been bad riots, and now they're trying to kind of get control of the city again. And maybe the law is using some of the gangs because it's so out of control. They need to subcontract this superheroing workout to gangs.
You know what it feels like? It feels like that 2000 AD one, the Shock.
Hardwire.
Yeah.
Hardware.
Yeah. Hardwire. Barb Wire, Hardwire. It feels a little bit more like Hardware. So in Hardware, there's been some kind of nebulous catastrophe.
Right.
Right. And so maybe it's not after the end.
I don't think we have a nuclear waste. We don't have any wasteland kind of stuff in this.
It just feels very grimy and...
Yes.
And like there's been a collapse in the social order of some type. This is in the comic.
Yeah. So we've got this woman named Barbara Kopetsky, who is a bounty hunter. She goes after bail jumpers. A literal bounty hunter, and she's blonde. She drives around a motorbike. She wears these sunglasses,
and she runs a bar, the Hammerhead.
Well, this was crazy. So, in issue 2 or somewhere in issue 1, she goes into this bar and she starts talking to people. So we get some of her bounty hunting stuff to start, and she's hanging out with this like cyborg dude that does the hacking, hacking on her job.
The Machine.
He's called the Machine, and there's a weird perspective error in the artwork early on where he breaks through the floor, and it looks like he's 50 feet tall or something. I was like, what? Anyway, so so later on she goes into this bar and she's chatting to people, and we find out she owns the bar. And I'm like, wait a second, how can she own the bar and be a bounty? Why does she need to do the bounty hunting?
Now, is it clear in the comics that she bounty hunts on the side to prop up the bar?
She's desperate for the money. But
I think it's hinted at pretty strongly.
Yeah, I think
it's explicit in the film, but I'm pretty sure in the comic it's hinted that she's hard up for money.
She's hard up for money,
and
she wants jobs. And the guy that the bail bondsman that gives her jobs is like, I don't have any more work for you. She says, you must have to think. He says, well, we've got these super felons. And she's like, whoa, like I dealt with one of those in some asterisk note issue. Okay, whatever. And
oh yeah, that's another thing. You're right. That reinforces the idea that there's a lot going on in other comics because there's those constant asterisks saying, see the issue, whatever of whatever. It's like, no, I'm never going to see that, so it's going to forever remain a mystery.
Yeah. So she's like, well, I don't want to take on these super felons or whatever. Yeah, so she goes into this bar. Oh, by the way, there's a great line where she pulls a gun on somebody. So there's a lot of captions in this first issue, narrative captions. That John Arcudi is usually a pretty good writer. I was a bit surprised. But there's one line where she pulls a gun on this dude, and the line is, because she reacts before most people even think, because she moves with a silent, smooth, eerie speed. People have compared her to a panther with a 45. I was like, whoa, somebody wrote this down. Yeah, and then it's
not a great panel either. She's sort of...
Yeah, they tried to do this kind of flash, like Carmine Infantino flash effect, where they have three images of her.
Three images, and it's meant to indicate that she's moving super fast.
She's moving super fast.
It's not a great panel. It's not a great
caption. And then I was shocked to find out that she owned the bar. And so what has happened is a couple of her bail jumpers that she's arrested have been assassinated.
Yes.
Just at the moment she's about to get them. And then we learned that this guy leaves a calling card. Ace of Spades calling card.
Yes.
Has been sniping these people, and he's called Death Card.
The very 90s name, very 90s comic name, Death Card.
Death Card.
Oh dear. I wrote that down. I've got Death Card staring at me right here in my notes.
Yeah. So then in issue 2, we find out that she not only is a panther with a 45, she's also like this super badass martial artist. Because she needs to hire a new bouncer for a bar, and the opening scene is her beating the crap out of these 10 dudes that have showed up looking for her.
That's right, this is how that second issue begins. And
that's how she's hiring them.
I didn't hate that.
I didn't hate it either, but I was surprised that they should have introduced her as a martial artist in issue 1. Instead of just using the guns. Because it was suddenly like, issue 2, suddenly she can just use her fists, and takes out really guys that are like 300 pounds.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's hinted at that she might be more than normal.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
At one of the powered individuals.
Oh.
Only obliquely.
But does she know that? And if yes, why was she so reluctant to deal with superfelons?
We don't know. I think she's reluctant to deal with superfelons because you have to kill them, don't you? Was that the problem?
No, it was dead or alive. And she didn't want to kill anybody. I think, am I remembering this right? She was like, I don't want to kill anybody, I want to bring people in alive.
It's not really worth going too far into it. Just, what I'm thinking of is that later on once the Death Card arc ends and she resolves that, there's a new one with... it's kind of like Sylar from Heroes.
Okay.
So you can absorb the powers of other people at the moment of death.
Oh.
So this villainess is running around killing other superpowered individuals and taking their powers.
Okay.
And she decides to go after Barb Wire.
Okay.
Because Barb Wire is the toughest person in the city.
Okay.
Fast and smart and good in a fight and good with guns and everything.
Okay.
So she decides to go after... That might be neither here nor there, but I think it's hinting maybe that there might be a little more to Barb than meets the eye.
Okay. So
because we're never told what the source of these people's powers is. We don't know.
Some dimensional...
They don't have the X gene
thing, yeah.
I mean, they haven't been bitten by radioactive... I read them all.
Okay, so... In the omnibus, you've got all 9 issues, plus the 4-issue... There was a 4-issue miniseries afterwards, which was written by Chris Warner himself, Penciled by, I'm not sure about, inked by Tim Bradstreet, who did those Punisher covers we talked about a few weeks ago.
Right.
And I think there was a Barb Wire revival around 2015, probably like 20th anniversary.
Yes. Right, I didn't read any of those,
No.
but the miniseries that you mentioned, the Ace of Spades one, Barb's appearance changes to match that of Pamela Anderson. I assume you noticed.
I did notice on the cover, yeah.
She doesn't look like... and I read that this one came out at the same time as the film.
Oh, okay, that makes some sense. But it would only be 2 years after the original.
Exactly.
series.
Yeah. So this miniseries came out to sort of to coincide with as the film came out, because there wasn't really any hint that this film was going to be a big dud. I found a interview or a puff piece in Premiere magazine from the 90s before the film came out in early 1996, and it was gushing about the prospects of this film.
Right.
They thought it was going to make bank. This person writing this article. We'll talk a bit more about that later.
So, what else is there to say? Well, she's got a brother who's blind named Charlie, and he seems to be kind of her armorer in the bar. Like, he's there building these super weapons that she can use to take out these very dangerous...
The super felons. Oh, she does go for super felons. I mean, I don't understand her reluctance.
She does end up. I can't remember what changes her mind. But basically, a super felon is taking out her targets, so she's stuck.
Well, that's pretty much it, right? I mean, otherwise she's just
so
sort of
I would say that from issue 2, I didn't read any further than issue 3, but there's fewer captions. The writing's a bit better after that first issue. Right. There is a hilarious line in issue 2, which is, "Get out of here, you starched linen slut," which
There's just not really much to say about it. It just feels very 90s. It's very much a product of what's sometimes called the dark age of comic books.
Yeah.
This valiant universe right before the crash.
Yeah.
Everyone's bulging with muscle.
Yeah, she gets around in a bikini top with a jacket, with a leather jacket over top. I'm like, well, which is it? Are you cold or are you hot? Choose one or the other.
That's right. Yes, she looks very stripperific.
Yeah.
All of the villains are corded with muscle.
Yeah.
Veins popping out everywhere in repose.
So I think the key thing is here, she's a bounty hunter of super felons, and she owns a bar.
Yes.
And she has a blind brother who builds her weapons. Let's say maybe that's the core of the character.
Absolutely.
I don't really know what else to say about her. I guess she doesn't like killing, so she has a code. That kind of code. But I don't know much about her personality from the first 3 issues.
Right. Well, I mean, she's sort of tough.
Yes,
no
her means of hiring a bouncer... by having 10 guys just show up and try to beat her up, and then the one
she's tough. She's capable. She wisecracks a little bit. Mm-hmm. She has the odd witticism. Not all of them are terrible. I would say Barb Wire in the comics is not an unlikable character.
Right. Yes. Oh, by the way, her name is Barbara Kopetsky.
You did say that.
I did. Did I say that?
Right at the very start.
Oh, I did.
That's okay.
All right.
Yeah, but I think I didn't hate the character. I was interested enough in adventures.
Yes, I agree, and I wish it was not set in this comics greatest world universe.
Completely boring universe.
So it would be stripped out of all that stuff and just give me the bounty hunter. Make them super felons, but I don't need 3 factions of super powered characters going after you.
And in some of the later comics that I read, a lot of the kind of dramatic tension comes from her. She's as the comics go further along, she's a player in the city. She's always trying to convince one of the gang leaders or another to reconcile with the other one, or that she wasn't responsible for something. And it's all very boring. I don't care about these gang leaders. I couldn't care less what they think of Barb or what Barb thinks of them.
Right.
I would just prefer for Barb to go on more whimsical adventures.
I wonder what year Garth Ennis's Hitman came out, and if it was before this, because that would be almost the same premise, except he's a hitman instead of a bounty hunter. But I mean, there's a possible vein of material there. But this is all there was. There was like the 13 issues plus the revival in 2015. I don't know how many issues that was. So there's not that much material there.
Right. But it's interesting that you said that you'd be happy with her removed from the gang context.
Well, I unfortunately got my wish. My wish came true. Unfortunately. Be careful what you wish for. Is the lesson to be learned here.
So that brings us to the film, I suppose.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's come out of the presumed pipeline that exists between the heads of Dark Horse and various movie production companies.
Yeah. So this came out in 1996.
So this is post Mask. The Mask?
Yes, definitely, because they put advertised Mask on the posters as like from the producers of the Mask, as if it's the same audience. Like the 10-year-olds who enjoyed the Mask are gonna go see Barb Wire. I don't know, dudes. But it's a really weird era. Like we've got we're kind of in the same zone as we mentioned, Hardware and Tank Girl, but Johnny Mnemonic, Time Cop, all those kind of 90s. Mid-budget, I guess Time Cop had more money, but it's kind of mid-budget attempts to do science fiction there. Especially it was like Gritty City. I'm thinking of like Lawnmower Man 2, I would put in the same category.
Oh my goodness. Demolition Man, perhaps?
Yeah, well, that was a big budget one. But yes, you're definitely in the same... Here's the future as we see it in 1996.
What about the Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone?
Absolutely, same period, yeah.
And the terrible Batman sequels, so the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, where they become farce. Yes,
yeah. I don't know if I put those in quite the same boat, but I do think, again, I think the leather Batman, that rubber Batman outfit, allows you to make a Barbed Wire movie. I actually think this movie would not exist without Batman 89.
Of course. Well, we made that very clear in our last week's podcast.
So it comes out in 1996. The director is David Hogan. It's written by Chuck Pfarrer, who also wrote Virus. So that was a script which he couldn't get made into a movie, so he made it into a Dark Horse comic, and then it got made into a movie.
Right, I did know that. So we'll probably do that one week.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And the co-writer and the story writer was Ilene Chaiken, who is currently an executive producer on The Handmaid's Tale.
Nuts. Well, I don't know how you can say this movie was written since it just rips off Casablanca.
Well, yes, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, do you remember day one of screenwriting school?
Yeah.
What if we just do that?
This guy also wrote Darkman and Green Hornet.
Oh, so Darkman's another film that I would put in this category.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
That you've mentioned.
Yeah.
I have some
and Hard
trivia.
Target with JCVD and the John Woo one. He wrote that as well. That's a crazy-ass movie.
How much did you find out about the director, David Hogan?
All I found out was, I saw one interview with him, and he said...
I saw that same interview.
He said that he was reluctant to make the movie because he saw the script and he saw the Casablanca stuff in it. He was like, this is dumb. And David Fincher convinced him to take the movie. He's like, just film it.
Well, I didn't find exactly the same interview. I found another one where they asked him... So since then, he hasn't done a lot since Barb Wire. He mostly does music videos.
Well, he did before, as did Fincher. Fincher was a video director, right?
And I have a little bit more detail about David Hogan that I can't wait to tell you.
Okay.
But first of all, this is an interview with him, appeared on the internet. They asked him, you have a feature film credit for directing the adaptation of the comic book Barb Wire.
Yeah.
Are comic books something you enjoy personally?
Oh, God. We have another Tim Burton situation here where he's like, I hate comic books.
He gives a three short sentence answer. Seemed like fun at the time, and they were, and the pay wasn't bad.
Okay.
Which I think pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
But wait till you hear this. Okay, so he hadn't directed a feature film before this one, but he had worked on feature films as a second unit director.
Right.
On two films in particular.
Okay.
One of which was Batman Forever.
Whoa, okay.
And the other, Alien 3.
Oh. Now it's all coming together. But the Batman Forever connection is funny because we talked about Lexi Alexander doing stunts on Batman and Robin.
Right, I forgot about that.
So,
you see, it's all coming together.
There's a farm of, like, comic book directors coming out of those movies. Okay, so we get I saw this. So when did I see this? I saw this. I feel like I was living in Japan at the time, so it would have been between 98 and 2000. I feel like it was between 98 and 2000. Like, I was watching videos almost every day. I would go to the video store and get a video out. And I haven't seen it since, and I only remembered one moment in it, and that's when she throws the money back at the bail bondsman and says, Canadian. And I did not remember that actor was Clint Howard. I didn't remember he was in this movie.
I was so thrilled to see Clint Howard.
I was too, and we'll get to all that. But anyway, had you seen this movie before?
No.
Okay.
No, I hadn't, no.
All right. So...
I don't think it was released in Australia.
Interesting. Okay.
In fact, I don't know if it was released outside of America. Because the box office take only lists the domestic, the American.
Well, I saw it in video in Japan anyway.
Well, that's another matter.
Yes. So we get a voiceover which tells us we're in the city of Steel Harbor, which is the name of the city in the comic book. It's 2017, and we've just gone through the Second American Civil War.
Yes.
And the United States is run by literal Nazis. Now, literal, I mean, they wear Nazi uniforms, yes. Now, but I have to say, first of all...
They're called the Congressional Directorate.
Yes.
And you don't know they're Nazis until we see them.
No, that's right.
So they're not so much literal Nazis as visual Nazis.
Well, I mean,
we don't know we don't know anything about their ideology. All we know is that every city in America is under martial law, except
the free city of Steel Harbor.
I don't know why martial law is so bad. I guess, because it makes a point that Steel Harbor is a city of crime and chaos, and the movie just assumes that we will agree that crime and chaos is better than martial law. And I suppose it is if the guys doing the martial law are Nazis.
Yeah. Yes, we'll come back to it. But for me, I was like, America run by Nazis in 2017? What are they thinking?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we get an opening scroll and a voiceover.
What were they thinking?
As well. And then 5 minutes later in the movie,
we get the same thing.
We get the same voiceover, but this time for Pamela. This time it's Barb Wire.
Yeah, Pamela Anderson.
So,
so we literally get the same information twice. That the
almost 3 times, because the voiceover is read out loud. Yes. But I will say, Casablanca starts with a voiceover as well, explaining...
It doesn't start with 2 voiceovers, though.
No. You just get one voiceover.
What's wrong with a voiceover?
So Pamela Anderson, I guess, at this stage, had come off of Baywatch and Home Improvement.
Yes.
Well, she was a big deal. She's credited as Pamela Anderson Lee at the time.
She just married.
Right.
She just married Tommy Lee.
Yes, and that Notorious tape had just come out.
That's correct.
Well,
so
Pamela
Anderson is at the height of her fame.
Yes.
Really.
Yes, and notoriety.
Well, perhaps fame's the wrong word. Perhaps notoriety is the correct word.
Yeah. So... I can't believe these notes I've got written down. So after the voiceover explaining that, and the world looks really red. There's like this red hue over everything, a lot like Hardware had, and
it did remind me of Hardware.
Opens with this pole dance, this striptease sequence where Pamela Anderson, it's just her black, and it's like a black background. She's being splashed with water like in Flashdance, just like constantly. Yeah. And then we learn that she's actually stripping in front of an audience. This is slowly revealed through the credits.
Yeah.
As the credits are rolling, and some dude in the audience says, "Take it all off, babe," and she whips off one of her stiletto heels and flicks it at the guy like a batarang, and it jabs him in the forehead, and I guess kills him.
I think it kills him.
Okay.
And she says, "Don't call me babe."
She says, if one more person calls me babe, it's the way she says it in this particular scene. And she walks off stage. Now, meanwhile, in the audience, there's this guy who's running the place, this strip joint, and his assistant comes up to him. This assistant looks and sounds a lot like Peter Lorre, but he's not the Peter Lorre character. The Peter Lorre character is actually the Clint Howard character, Schmitz, who comes up later on. Yeah. Anyway, right away, I was like, this is bizarre. So anyway, this guy is like, so we learned that from this guy, the head of the bar, that Barb Wire has only been dancing there for one night. So right out of the gate, I'm like, wait a second, this stripper killed a guy from the stage, and this is everybody in here is well dressed. They're wearing suits. It's not like a dive bar.
No. It's not got truckers in it.
No, it's a fancy, expensive place, and she killed a guy on her first night on the job, and they're just like, whatever. They take the body out. So they find. We also hear
Steel Harbor for you. It's a crazy, lawless city.
Yes,
which everyone wants to live in.
Yes. So then we find out that actually, this guy has kidnapped some young girl, the head of the bar, and Barb is there.
She's undercover.
She's undercover as a stripper to rescue this girl. So she goes in, they have a breakout, she pulls this pistol thing out and fires a grappling hook out of it and says, "Ever see Batman?" to the girl as they jump out the window.
I suppose, yeah. 6-7 years after Batman 1989 came out, that must have seemed like a topical reference.
Yeah.
I wonder how topical it was in 2017.
2017.
Let alone in other dimensional 2017.
Well, I mean, we haven't even talked about Sonny and Cher yet, so I mean, Batman's at least a little bit closer. Anyway, so she saves the girl and takes the girl to her parents who have hired her. And the parents are like, "Well, we'll only pay you half. We only have half the money." And he says, "Well, I'll keep half." She says, Barb Wire says, "I'll keep half the girl then." And they're like, "Okay." And then we see her drive away with their car. And that's
pretty much. So, yeah, you're right. So, Barb, this is an important kind of like character moment for this version of Barb Wire.
Yes.
So, I just want to return to that scene briefly. She brings up with the girl, and the parents are just so happy to see their little girl. They can't believe that she's been rescued.
Yeah.
And Barb Wire just absolutely does not crack a smile. She's just frowning at them. She might not be capable of cracking a smile because she's wearing so much makeup. And she's like, yeah, this is lovely. Where's my money?
Yeah. Her main thing is she wants the money.
This is it. Yeah. And they say, oh, and they're a bit confused. All right, you've just saved our preteen daughter. But okay. And he said, well, look, I tried my best, but I could only get half, and he holds out half the money.
I feel like somehow the movie's projecting to me, or I predicted that they weren't going to have the money to pay her, or they were going to try not to pay. I don't know what it was.
Well, that happens later again with Clint Howard. But, I mean, that's what I thought. I'm looking at it thinking, are they sincere? They are apparently sincere.
Yes, because they do give her the car.
And Barb's response, of course, is to threaten to keep half of this innocent girl in a school uniform.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, surely we can work something out. And she's like, maybe. And then the next scene, of course, she's driving off in her. And the takeaway from this is she only cares about money.
Yep.
And she's really mean.
Yes.
And everything's like a kind of nasty line. So whenever anyone says anything to her, her she always mutters or hisses kind of like an unpleasant comeback at them.
Right. Yes. I even wrote some of them maybe. Because it's just,
I did too.
It's relentless.
Yeah, relentless is the word. I think I wrote relentless down. It's exhausting. She's relentless. I've written she's relentlessly negative.
Yes.
It's absolutely exhausting to watch.
Yeah.
There's a scene later on where Temuera Morrison's character is explaining his quest, how he's come to meet her and the hardships she's gone to. And she goes, how utterly goddamn heroic.
And he explains the importance of what he's doing. And that there's this virus that's going to destroy the entire world, and she just doesn't care.
Never registers.
She's like, give me the money. I think part of the problem here is, I was not comparing this movie to the comic a lot. I kept comparing it to Casablanca.
Understandable.
Which is not fair, not fair. I don't know which.
I think it is fair, because if you're going to base your movie on Casablanca...
Part of the problem is, in Casablanca, right out of the gate, you've got Humphrey Bogart playing a typical kind of Humphrey Bogart character. But he's so haunted and heartbroken and ruined, and it's kind of obvious obvious the right word, in the way he projects it through his eyes and through his acting and his coldness. But
his coldness is very clearly the result of emotional damage.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
So and Barb,
she does not seem heartbroken at all. She's just angry, and she's angry at this guy. And we're like,
didn't have the money.
We're like, what's the reveal? Well, when Temuera Morrison,
I brought him up.
Axel, when he showed
Axel
the ex-boyfriend comes back, much as Ingrid Bergman comes back with the husband. In this case, he shows up with his wife. It's just a gender swap.
Yeah. So it is.
Then we get a flashback as to she's like, "You betrayed me, and my brother's eyes were blasted out. He's blind now." And we get the flashback. And the flashback is her in full combat gear. With her hair is like flowing out of the helmet. I'm like, okay, over her hair. And then this messenger comes up and says, "Axel's not coming." And she's like, "What?" He said to go. So that was it. That was the betrayal.
That was the big betrayal.
He didn't show up.
He just didn't show up.
I thought it was going to be like he actually gave information that got Charlie's eyes blasted off or something like that. It was nothing. He just didn't show up. And she's so angry at this guy, furious, but
it just comes across as her general unpleasantness towards everybody.
Yes.
It may be fair to compare this movie to Casablanca because they obviously based it on it, but I think it's not fair to compare Pamela Anderson to Humphrey Bogart. Pamela Anderson... Pamela Anderson can't act.
No, absolutely not.
And so she just cannot perform the role in a way to make this character likable.
No, and you know what? There's one
really unlikable.
She only has one scene where they try to make her likable, and it's the moment where
the Virgin.
There's a soldier.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of troops that are about to be sent back to the front, and they're at her bar.
Who do they represent?
And one of them comes up and says, "Could I have a dance, Miss?"
With Barb Wire.
With Barb Wire, and she's like, "Yes." And she's like, and they start dancing, and she says, "Do you have a girlfriend back home?" He says, "Yeah." And he says, "Well," she says, "Well, just imagine that I'm her." And this is the one moment where we're supposed to feel like this is her soft side.
Well, this is all the evidence we get that Barb could be a good person.
Okay, well, compare this to the scene in Casablanca.
I love that
where Claude Rains...
Play it again, Sam.
Claude Rains is the French police chief. So this girl comes up to Rick in Casablanca, and she's like, "The police chief asked me to come talk to you. Can he be trusted?" And we learn through... it's spoken around... They talk around it, but basically, she has to have sex with the French police chief to get her visa for her and her husband to leave the country. Yeah. And what Rick does is he goes over to the blackjack or the roulette table where the husband is, desperately trying to win enough money to get the visas without her having to have sex with the guy, which he doesn't know she's going to do. And Rick rigs the game so that he wins the money, and then they're able to leave without having to do that. That's a lot. That plays out a lot different than this ridiculous scene where she dances.
Just comforts this fresh-faced 18-year-old guy that's about to go to the front lines.
Okay.
She says, "How about close your eyes and pretend I'm your girl back in Kansas or wherever he's from."
Yeah. So what we learn is the Nazis
Sorry, please. Go on, it's fine.
So the Nazis are after this scientist named Karina Devonshire, a.k.a. Cora D. A.k.a. Cora D. So they're trying to extract the information from this woman in a crazy scene. It's like out of Tetsuo the Iron Man, where this woman's rigged up to... It's rigged up... This woman's rigged up to like a metal bikini, like it's on her breasts and her crotch, and she's moaning like it's the Orgasmatron from Barbarella. And but they can get images out of her head, and they're like, "We got to find this woman because..." And she's trying... This woman... I think they mention the virus, or her DNA her DNA is the antidote. That's mentioned in the scene. And also, she's after the retinal lenses.
This is the worst... Yeah, the retinal lenses.
Well,
so this is the worst MacGuffin ever.
Well, no.
Not the retinal lenses.
There's two...
There are two MacGuffins.
One's a real MacGuffin. The real MacGuffin is the DNA thing, because we never see anyone die of the virus in the movie. It's just mentioned.
Yeah.
The false MacGuffin is the retinal eye lenses, which are signed by Charles de Gaulle, so you have free access to leave Lisbon to go to America.
Signed by Charles de Gaulle? What?
Well,
that's Casablanca.
In Casablanca,
of course, that's Casablanca.
The exit papers are signed by Charles de Gaulle, so literally nothing can stop them. And in this, if you have the retinal lenses, they can't read your retinas through the scanners.
Is widespread, unlike in the real world.
It's absolutely infallible. If you have the retinal lenses, if you have the papers signed by Charles de Gaulle, you can escape.
Yes.
These are the papers. In this case, you can escape to Canada and then get a plane to Europe, Or in Casablanca's case, you can get to Lisbon and then get a plane to America.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So they are literally the papers.
They are so they're not real. Those aren't really a MacGuffin. Those are like legit. The plot can't move forward unless you have those papers.
Yes. Yes. But the other thing, the Congressional Directorate's power is maybe built on this virus. It's never really made clear.
It's not. It has. There's a line given earlier. Yes.
Of all places,
later, much later. Yeah.
Topeka, Kansas.
Yeah. So somehow Topeka got wiped out by the virus, and that was the turning point.
Why Topeka, Kansas?
It was a test area. I guess they were going for low.
It's like a tiny. Well, I think it's the capital of Kansas, but it's only got like 300,000 people.
I think that was a test. It was like the test site.
That's what.
I don't know.
The way they tell it, though, it's like that's what. Like, the government fell when Topeka, Kansas got destroyed.
Yes.
I suppose 300,000 people is a lot of people
to
die of an AIDS-derived virus. And, yeah, it's never explained why her DNA... She was a scientist working on the project, and that seems to be the reason they want her back. But then, also, her DNA contains the secret to an antidote or an antigen to the red ribbon airborne AIDS virus.
Yes, which kills in 12 hours.
Right.
This is all mentioned. We never see a person die in 12 hours. Nobody ends up stuck, has the virus in their body, and it's like, we gotta save this
virus is barely
person.
mentioned. It's as you say, it's unimportant. I don't even know why they included it. It's
you know what it is? It's because Victor Laszlo was publishing underground newspapers, and he had escaped from a concentration camp, and he was an embarrassment to the Nazis, and that's why they wanted to catch him.
Yeah.
Eventually, they wanted to kill him. Once he sings the what's the French national anthem? He sings that in Rick's Café Americain. That really embarrasses the Nazis. They're like, well, he's not just singing Casablanca. We're going to kill him here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's the same thing. Well, why did she have to have like a weird DNA thing?
Well, because it wouldn't be dramatic enough if she was just like inspiring.
It's just so much worse
to the rebels.
She was going to reveal the secrets, but instead it has to be... Yeah, it's terrible.
So anyway, this scientist, Cora D, is on the run. She's being led by Axel, played by Temuera Morrison. His first movie after Once Were Warriors, which is only 2 years earlier. And which I must have seen around the same time that I saw this, and I don't remember if I made the connection at the time, but I don't know. But he was also in Aquaman and Green Lantern, we should mention for the purposes of podcast records.
Absolutely.
And
currently playing Boba Fett in the Star Wars expanded universe.
Yes, absolutely, of course. Well, not even currently, since he was Django. What was that? Was 2000? So that was only 6 years after Attack of the Clones. Was 6 years after.
He wasn't in Attack of. Was he in Attack of the Clones?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Because he was in those two. He was and then he was all the clone troopers.
That's right. It's not even a comic
book. But that was pretty early. I mean, that's only 6 years after Once Were Warriors and 4 years after this.
Good point.
By the way, the doorman, I noticed as soon as I saw him at Rick's Café Americain, is played by Tom Lister, who's this really big black dude. He was also in Dark Knight. And Fifth Element, he was president of Earth in the Fifth Element.
That's right.
I noticed him too. He's in here for 10 seconds. So we get to the bar, which is actually called Hammerhead. And Udo Kier.
I love this.
Is her head dude, like the manager or something. I don't know what he is exactly.
He calls himself a waiter, but he's sort of like the maitre d' / manager.
Yeah.
But he acts like a maitre because he's wearing like a tuxedo.
Yes.
He's bald. He's got a shaved head, and his name is Curly.
Yeah, sometimes he wears a wig. Like, there's one scene where he wears a curly wig into the room, and she's like, take off that wig.
Sort of this film's idea of humor is to have a bald guy.
Curly. Yes,
of course,
you're
Udo
right.
Kier,
but I wonder if it was his idea to wear that wig.
It was. I can confirm it.
Oh, really?
I read an interview. This is the Premiere magazine interview that I mentioned. I might as well digress now.
Okay.
So talking about how he got cast as Barb's #1 guy.
You are my #1 guy.
You are my #1 guy. Udo Kier relates his stereotyping dilemma. I had been offered the part of the villain, but I wanted to be Curly, he says. I had just done Johnny Mnemonic.
Oh, wow.
And didn't want to get typecast. It is so easy for that to happen when you are a foreigner. Once he had the part, there were casting hijinks to follow. He says that he worked in films for over 30 years and had never been on a film where the director was changed. We haven't brought that up yet, the original director,
That's right, yeah.
who was Adam Rifkin,
Okay.
was dumped a week in, which apparently caused all kinds of chaos.
Right.
And Udo Kier references it here. He didn't know what to do.
Okay.
What do you do? The guy that cast him is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did was he went to the new director's house in Malibu to meet him.
Okay.
Then they apparently really hit it off.
Okay.
We laughed and laughed and made up this very funny character with a bald head and a tattoo of a fly on his cheek. So that's the story of where Curly comes from.
So Udo Kier's starting to turn into a comic book movie Oblivion All-Star because he was in Prince Valiant and he's going to show up in Blade as well. And who knows what else he's going to pop up in. So here's where we learn very specifically that Barb Wire is doing these jobs, like the undercover stripper job, because she needs the money to keep the bar open.
Yes.
This bar is like Studio 54 times 10. It is huge, and it is heaving with people.
Yeah.
Charge people 10 cents more a drink, you will get all that money back in one night. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Because they actually talk about the figures of numbers. She's like $10,000 for this bounty hunt. You're not making that one night in this place? It is crazy.
And it's not just a bar, it's a restaurant. Like it says food. Udo Kier at one point tells someone that the steaks are very good tonight.
Yes.
And not only that, it's a tattoo parlor as well. People are getting tattoos done.
Yes.
This isn't like the Hammerhead in the comics.
Yeah,
which is a dive.
An absolute. It's like one brown room. It's like plywood walls and like a few people sitting around on a couple of bar stools.
Yeah, and a stage.
No, this is
one, like, there's a music. There's like a metal band going, or a hard rock band up on the stage.
Called. I looked them up. It was hard. They're called Die Cheerleader. That band.
Fantastic.
And there's Sam, the piano player, is actually the DJ up in the booth.
Yes.
Making oddball announcements.
Yes.
And dedications to people.
Which aren't funny.
No, nothing's funny in this movie.
Nothing's funny. Yeah, so this place should be absolutely... Yeah, so we have a separation of story and setting here.
An extra $10,000 just to moonlight, just to go out at night, doing all sorts of crazy things. So, by the way, so the Nazis were also, besides this woman, they're trying to find this guy named Krebs, who is her contact, who has the retinal lenses.
He has the papers.
And they can't find... So, okay, so next time Barb's like, okay... A girl's got to do it. A girl's get a voiceover. A girl's got to do some things to get by in this town. And we see her prostituting herself in a doorway. And this guy comes by. Guy carrying a huge brown paper bag full of pornography. We're going to learn later. But she stops.
He's wearing a white suit, just like what's the name of the character? It's in Casablanca. He's wearing a white suit. Or am I thinking of the Maltese? I'm thinking of the Maltese Falcon.
Okay,
it's okay. Remember the character in the Maltese Falcon?
Yeah. So she stops this guy.
It must be a reference. It's because he's heavy, he's sweaty.
Yeah.
And then they go up to his room.
She's like, "You want looking for a good time?" He's like, "Yeah, okay." And so they go up to her room, but
don't forget the best bit. He asks her if she's licensed.
Oh yes. No. He says, "Have you had your health check?"
Oh, that's it. And she goes,
do you have your medical registration, he says, or something like that.
And then she says, I just got checked yesterday.
Yeah.
And then she gets out a card, and it's like Bureau of Prostitution.
It says license of... So I wrote this down because we actually get a close-up of the card. Yeah. Like the credit card, the Bat card in Batman and Robin, we get a close-up of the card.
Never leave the cave without it.
Yep. We get a close-up of the card, and it says license of prostitution... Good health as of 1-7-19. The movie's set in 2017.
I didn't notice that.
It's got a fake name. Well, I paused it. I was like, did I see that right? And they give you a close-up of the card.
Oh, goodness.
I'm like, okay. Anyway, so, yeah. So she has a license for prostitution. Like a license to kill, I guess.
Who's giving out this license? I thought this place was anarchy.
Yes. Is this place anarchy or not? Because they have a running... administration apparently that is licensing people for all sorts of stuff like this.
Not only that, but they have police who may be responsible to the directorate or may not be.
Well, I think
because we have the Louis character shows up.
It's exactly the same as the relationship between the Gestapo and the French police in Casablanca.
In Morocco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So
because the Louis character shows up at the bar before. I think this is before Barb goes, or is it after? No, it's after. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Go on.
But as she goes into this guy's apartment, she notices she looks suspiciously at these dudes in the lobby, and then when she gets there, she knocks the guy out after he comes out in a gimp suit.
Yeah. She says, "Did you wash your hands?" He says, "No, I've been bad."
I'm a bad boy or something like that.
The only time I laughed in the movie.
Right. Right. So she knocks him on the head, knocks him out, and then she fights these two guys in the lobby because one of them is Krebs. Now, she found Krebs now in the comic.
Wait. Wasn't Krebs in the apartment? He was the guy in the... Wasn't Krebs the bail jumper?
Yeah,
so he was in the bed. She spots him through the wall with her high-tech infrared thing.
Okay.
And then she blows out the wall.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's why she seduced this...
Right, yeah, she's trying to get to Krebs.
Because Krebs is in the next apartment over.
Yeah.
But, as you mentioned, there are two guys, suspicious-looking guys, watching everyone that goes in the apartment.
Okay.
They hear the explosion when she blows out the wall and come running up.
Yeah, and there's a big firefight. But that's not my point. My point is she found Krebs very easily.
Yes.
Whereas the whole Gestapo mechanism cannot find this guy. They're like, where's this guy with the lenses? And she found him while she was moonlighting.
The Gestapo aren't present in the city.
I guess not.
In this version.
But in the comic, we're told that Barb Wire can find anyone easily, which is why
and she does,
this other guy is following, this death card has been following her because she's able to find people that he's not able to find. And
she actually does in the comic, she actually does do detective work.
Right.
Right. She actually is a competent kind of figure of like a tracker and a finder. Whereas in this Barb Wire, as you say, we don't know how she found out where Krebs was.
No, and we don't even know she was looking for Krebs until she catches the guy and says, "Okay, Krebs, I got you." I'm like, wait a second, that's the guy that the Gestapo are looking
I think we're supposed to just accept that it's coincidence. He's jumped his bail.
Yes.
And it does sort of play him because she captures him after she slaughters these two guys, incidentally.
Yeah.
She kills them. I guess in self-defense, but still, she kills them. I think she'd subdued them, and then she sort of breaks one guy's neck and shoots the other one. It's pretty vicious.
Does she say sweet dreams to one of the guy that she breaks his neck or something like that?
It's pretty vicious, I remember thinking.
Yeah.
So she takes Krebs back to... And but she doesn't know that the Gestapo are after Krebs.
No.
Because, here we go, she wanders in, and it's Clint Howard.
Yes.
Clint Howard is the bail officer.
Yeah, Schmidt. Yeah.
Schmidt.
Yeah.
And it's so great. Out he comes, and, she's horrible and mean like usual. I want... originally the deal was for 10,000, but she wants 20,000. Yeah. And Krebs is
like, okay,
here's your 20,000, and then she throws it back at him and says, Canadian. Yeah, Canada's mentioned a lot in this movie.
We didn't even mention that Pamela Anderson was born on July 1st, 1967, which was the 100th anniversary of Canada's Confederation. So she is Canada's baby.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So it's not just that this film talks about Canada
it was a little
constantly.
It was almost like an in-joke, but it had to be in the script that the destination was Canada. I mean, where else would it be if they were... I don't know. It was...
I doubt that people writing this film even knew that
serendipity.
Pamela Anderson was from
that's right.
Canada.
Yeah.
So Krebs then makes a big show of calling out his goons.
I want to say
Krebs, sorry, Clint Howard.
I have to rewind because I found a note that I...
Brilliant. Okay, no, I'm going to...
Okay, while she's walking the John, back to his apartment, there's a dwarf running around in the street. And the dwarf looks at them and says, "Hey, nice nuts." And then her John trips, and then the dwarf trips, and she says, "Get a life." And I'm like, what does "Hey, nice nuts" mean? Why did he say that? Why does she say "get a life" when he trips? So bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Okay, but they do retinal scan into the apartment. So that was my first clue that, this is not a real MacGuffin. It's not a MacGuffin. It's like a thing. Like it's going to come up.
Retinal scanning is everywhere. Everyone has handheld retinal scanners.
Yeah. And she says to Krebs, "You're my last bail jumper." Does that mean this is her last one of the night, or the last one she's ever going to do because now she has enough money with $10,000 to save her bar that's turning over $20,000 a night? Or 30, I don't know.
She's completely opaque. except that she's mean and likes money.
Yes, and there's a lame chip to nail kind of joke there after the firefight.
Yes.
She doesn't say it out loud, but we have to get it close by the nails, and she's chipped one. So yeah, she meets up with Clint Howard. Okay, now we get the Claude Rains character, who's played by Xander Berkeley, which I quite liked. We know him from Terminator 2 and from Candyman.
Oh yeah, he's in Candyman.
He is, and he has been in several episodes of Walking Dead. He was one episode of Supergirl, and he's done a lot of Batman and Spider-Man voiceover work for cartoons.
He's comic book royalty.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. So he shows up, and he's looking for Krebs because the Gestapo want him, and they're obviously pressuring him, much like they're pressuring.
Well, they know that
Claude Rains to get Victor Lawson.
I know that if they find Krebs, they'll find the retinas / papers.
Yes.
And
now,
they know if they find the papers / retinas, then they'll find Cora D /
yes. Now, I'm Canadian, you're Australian. We don't know how bail bondsman stuff really works, but wouldn't the police have a line? If the bail bondsman had caught a jumper, wouldn't the police know about it? Has no idea about this. And I guess we learn later that Clint Howard has turned Krebs, or he's planning to turn him over to the Gestapo himself.
He was, well...
How did Xander Berkeley, I can't remember what his name was.
Evil guy.
He's not evil. He's all right, actually. He turns out to be a decent guy.
No, you're right,
Much
actually.
like Claude Rains.
Yes.
That's where the beautiful friendship comes from at the end.
Yes, he's Louis.
Yeah. Louis, yes.
You're right. He is a goodie. He seems evil in that first scene, much like Louis does. But
yeah, and she says that
she has to bribe him $3,000.
She says he's honest. He's a liar and a cheat or something like that because but he's honest about it or something. Right. It's her voiceover about it.
You're right. Yeah, she says he's. Yeah, that's pretty much what he says. He's honest about being a crook.
Yeah,
and that's the best you can hope for in this town. Anyway, but maybe that's where her money's going because she has to pay him. She pays him $3,000
to stop arresting people downstairs.
Yeah.
Even not that much from the amount of people that are in here paying $14 for cocktails. Come on. I have doubts.
Maybe he's shaking her down every other hour.
So, I think this is the part where she gives the line in voiceover, Miss Kopetsky died in the war, I'm Barb Wire.
No, she says it out loud.
She says that aloud.
He keeps
with
calling her.
No intonation in her voice. It is bizarre. It's like the key. This is a superhero movie. It should have been the first line or the last line of the movie. It's right in the middle, and she has no.
She just delivers it straight. The way she delivers every line.
She just read
in the
it
same
phonetically.
Grumpy monotone. Every line. It's.
Then we get this bizarre scene where it's like. The next day, and this drunk comes into the bar during the daytime, and she sets her dog Camille.
It's supposed to be comedy again.
Camille bites this drunk on his crotch and then drags him outside. That's why isn't any of this in here?
Because it's supposed to be funny.
I guess.
Yeah, I've written it down. Dog bites Wang. Not funny.
Yes. So, the Gestapo show up. Head of the Gestapo, by the way, this guy stole Ed Harris's voice. It was really distracting the whole movie. But anyway, he comes in with the Xander Berkeley police chief guy, and we get the scene around the table, which is the exact same scene as the scene with Rick and those guys in Casablanca. It's the same banter.
I hope everyone listening
it's like, I know your background.
I absolutely hope everyone listening has seen Casablanca, or pause the podcast to watch Casablanca, because we are referring to every character in Barb Wire by the name of their counterpart in that movie.
So, as she leaves the table, there's a hilarious line from Xander Berkeley where the Gestapo guy says something about her, compliments her, like backing a compliment or something, and Xander Berkeley says, yes, with most impressive assets. And he delivers it in the same way that I just did. No emotion. It's not like he's like, there's no sleaze in it. He's not impressed. I don't even know why he said it at all. It's almost like the
director's just like, yep, cut. Right. Don't you want me to do another take of that, David? Yeah. David Hogan, you don't want me... I kind of flubbed that line. No, let's move on. Come on, I've got places to be.
Slowly we're learning that there's only one pair of these lenses, these retinal lenses. Where did they come from? That there's only one pair in existence anywhere. They can't get another pair. They have to get this one pair.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I can kind of get the
Well,
virus.
maybe they're just the one pair that are in Steel Harbor.
But
no, you're right.
They've crossed. They didn't have to come to Steel Harbor. Of
You're
all
right.
the gin joints in the whole world, they didn't have to come here. They could
Why
have
did
gone.
they walk in a mine?
They could have gone anywhere else and tried to get retinal. And they're just held by this guy who is arrested and is a bail jumper, but he's working for the resistance. It's all very hard to follow.
Well, I mean, they are. I mean, they're. You're right. I mean, they are. You said that they're less of a MacGuffin than the DNA, but they're still ultimately a MacGuffin.
Yeah, because
aren't
there's
they?
only one.
They're
so,
just
yeah, it
the
doesn't
thing
really-
that you need to
Yes.
escape
Yes.
the country. It could be forged papers. It could be retinal lenses. It could
Yes.
be fake passports.
Yes.
It could be a microlight helicopter. Anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
So Schmitz shows up and he's like, actually, I've got the lenses. He shows up in the bar. He shows up in her bar during the daytime. And she's like, I'm not making a deal. And he's like, so he decides he has to hide the lenses, and he hides them in her kitchen.
But he's desperate, isn't he? He's begging. This is another scene that makes Barb a pretty hard character to like. Because Clint Howard showed up, and I think he's maybe killed Krebs for the lenses.
Right.
I think that's why Krebs is out of the picture. But he has the lenses now.
Right, because he knows that the lenses are worth
Oh yeah, he knows they're worth
money.
$2 million. So Krebs himself was worth $1 million. Okay, I have to explain some stuff.
We see Krebs' dead body later.
Yes.
Dead body later because the rebels have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think Clint Howard maybe killed Krebs. But what's happened is the Gestapo have arrived at Clint's bail headquarters
and they
and
killed
killed
guys.
everyone
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Looking for
That's
the
right,
lenses.
that's right,
Looking
yeah.
for Krebs and the lenses.
So he knows
Clint
if they're
Howard
gonna-
has just
yeah,
escaped
yeah.
and he has the lenses with him. He goes to Barb Wire and he's desperate, right? He's like, I'm in deep, deep trouble. I'm like a dead man. You know?
Okay, so Peter Lorre killed those 2 German couriers on the train to get the papers, right?
Yes.
So he comes to Rick and he's like, can you hold these papers here? And Rick stashes them in the piano. He's like, fine. And he throws them in the piano.
Yeah, well, that doesn't happen in this
No.
scene. Instead,
She's like, screw you.
Well, she says screw you because he cheated her.
Yeah.
So that scene with all that hard bargaining where she
because now
tells him
she's
it
like,
has
I
to
could have
be
got $1
20
million for those lenses and you wouldn't pay me.
No, for Krebs. Krebs was worth $1 million.
Yeah.
So she's like, you ripped me off. You gave me 20,000
exactly,
Canadian when you knew that Krebs was worth $1 million. And he goes, forget about Krebs. $1 million doesn't matter. These lenses are worth $2 million. I'm a dead man. Either the resistance is going to kill me for what I did to Krebs, or the Gestapo is going to kill me for having the lenses.
Yeah.
You need to help me sell these. And she says, I don't buy, I don't sell. Get out of my bar. It's like, what do you do?
All she cares about is money.
Yeah. What do you mean
She
you don't buy,
buys
you
and
don't
sells. She
sell?
runs a bar.
What do you mean you don't buy, you don't sell? I don't know this. Like, he's what? She just the fact you just go die. She just throws him out, and he, just get out.
It's really a line.
You cheated me out of $1 million, so get out of my bar.
Yeah,
don't
it's
buy
not like
this.
drugs.
No,
That's a line that you would deliver about drugs. I don't buy, I don't sell.
but it's just part of this relentless negativity.
Yeah. So he hides.
Yes.
Them
So
in the
instead of
kitchen.
hiding them in the piano, he hides them under...
yeah.
He goes into the kitchen
Yeah.
where Barb's busy drinking or whatever she's doing, and he puts... They're magnetized, perhaps? He sticks them under the steel kitchen counter.
Yeah.
Clunk. They make an audible clunk.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans up. We see Barb's brother Charlie.
Yeah. The blind brother.
He's heard everything.
Yeah.
And he's heard Clint Howard hide the
Yes.
lenses.
He knows exactly where they are just by sound.
Yes.
Um.
Well, he's figured it. I mean, he's sussed it out. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he heard what was going on.
Right. So now Ingrid Bergman comes back and has an argument with Barb Wire, and he's like, I had to leave you for a reason or whatever.
Ingrid Bergman / Temuera Morrison.
And finally they have like this moment where they kiss in the elevator, and then he introduces Cora
as his wife.
as his wife.
Because they're gender flipped version of
Yes, and
Ingrid
then says,
Bergman
but we had to get married.
Victor
It was like for some reason, it was like, we're not in love. It's just...
I thought you sure they're not in love?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a line where he's
Okay.
like, we had to get married for the paperwork or something like that. It was just for some convenience, but it didn't make sense in the way they described it. Maybe, you might be right. Maybe I missed the line.
No, yeah.
Because I remember they were like, we had to get married, And then we ran away. I'm like, well, if you ran away, why'd you have to get married? You could just run away, like, without getting married. It didn't add up to me.
I thought it's just a really odd scene because they have no chemistry.
Yeah.
They kiss in the lift. She's wearing nothing, incidentally, except a towel and some bar.
Well, she's wearing nothing in most of the movie. She's constantly wearing bustiers, which anytime there's a stunt woman, it's pretty obvious because she's so exposed all the time. And there's hilarious scenes where like she changes. There's one point when the Xander Berkeley police chief is questioning her. They go up to her room and she changes behind a like a shield, like one of those. What do you call those things?
Divider.
A divide, yeah, where she changes, which you can see through completely. But anyway, she changes out of this revealing into her leather bustier. I'm like, what? I guess she's going out for this is what she works in? I don't know. Yeah, so she... When was the scene where she was in the bubble bath? Was that when... Is that the scene? That was just
immediately preceding this one.
So, right, so then those two explain the whole HIV derivative virus.
Yep.
And they're like, look, we need to get Cora to Canada, so she can, they can get the antidote out of her or whatever, and then we can find
She just needs to get out because they're going to kill her.
Right. But secretly, Barb's like, hey, I'm going to use those lenses, and at some point she finds out she has the lenses. I can't remember when, but Charlie must give her the lenses. But
yeah, Charlie gives her the lenses, and she just promptly announces, well, I'm going to sell these.
Well, I think didn't she say she was going to go to Canada?
Because, yeah. Well,
she's going to sell them and use the money to go to Canada?
When Clint is trying to get her to take the lenses, he's like, to sell the lenses for him, and so he can escape.
Yeah.
He's like, we will make $2 million from selling these lenses. Yeah. That's how much they're worth. Think of what you can do with that money. She probably, the bloody bar itself is probably worth $2 million. But anyway, it's full of booze.
Yeah.
Everything's LED lights. The tables all have inset lighting. It's very, very fancy. They're serving steaks. Moving on.
Yeah.
He says, you can get out of here. You can go to Europe. You can go to Paris. You can buy some new eyes for that brother of yours. So when Charlie produces the lenses, she just promptly yanks them out of his hand. She goes, and he goes, what are you going to do with those? She goes, what do you think? I'm going to sell them, and we're going to go to Paris. Or she says, I hear Paris is lovely this time of year. And you're going to get you new eyes. And he's chasing after her, saying, no, Barb, it's wrong. You know it's wrong. We got to give it to the resistance. It belongs to them.
Yeah.
And she's like, nah. And then she goes to meet...
So she has to get past the border. She has to go past the toll gates in order to get to the airfield.
It's on the other side of the Forbidden Zone.
Well, she has to talk to this guy called Big Fat. So now this scene, these are all Mad Max characters. Somehow we've gone from this Studio 54, you go to the other side of town, suddenly it's Mad Max. These guys are all done up in like the metal.
They're wearing like circuit boards on their chests.
There hasn't been an apocalypse or nuclear war. It's just been a civil war. I don't know what. Yeah, they're wearing weird gear. Circuit boards, yes.
And Big Fatso is this... He's like a huge overweight guy, and he's being carried around...
Earth digger, like something like that. He's like...
He's being carried around in the shovel, the shovel of an earth mover.
Yeah. She makes a deal with him to...
First for $1 million for the lenses.
Yeah.
And then also passage through the Forbidden Zone or the Unoccupied Area or whatever it's called, and through the 2 checkpoints. So she needs an armed escort and transportation. And he agrees, and he agrees to pay her 750,000 Canadian, presumably.
Yeah.
And they're going to meet back there in a day.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Charlie has gone to
see the rebels.
Yes.
And it's actually a trap, or the rebels have been killed.
Well, they've been found.
They've been found. And then Charlie is also captured and killed.
He's killed. He's interrogated, not with the orgasm machine, unfortunately, just with regular old torture.
They also, at one stage, they get one of Schmitz's dead bail cops, and they take his dead body and they get memories out of that.
Yes.
I swear I've seen this elsewhere, where you get memories out of a corpse. And I can't remember
what... Well, it's a bit of a trope, isn't it?
It is. It feels like it. I can't remember what other movie I've seen
you can see, like, the last thing a murdered person saw in their eyes. I think it's kind of like a trope.
Okay.
The last memories. That's another thing. In 2017, we have memory scanning technology. Yeah. So it's used on the lady in the metal the metal bikini in the first scene.
Yeah.
And that's how they can tell if she's telling the truth when they're interrogating her. And they use it on this dead henchman. They can get his last moments out of it.
Yeah. So... Okay, so...
And it doesn't work on Charlie because he's blind.
That's right. He didn't see anything.
He has no mind's eye.
Yeah. So they didn't get anything from Charlie. She comes back. She finds out that Charlie's been killed. This actually... An hour and 10 minutes, 20 minutes into the movie, and she finally has, like, some emotion about this.
She shows an emotion for the first time aside from dull...
Yeah,
meanness.
and when she danced with that soldier and was like...
But we don't even see her face, really, when she's doing that.
But this kind of inspires her, like, it puts a bit of fire into her, like, now she actually has a stake in it. She wants to get back at the Gestapo instead of just not caring about either side. So they go to the airfield. Now, these tolls, these barricades they have to go through, really look like absolute trash. And aren't these government installations that are, like... blocking these borders?
I think that they're actually... I think they're just more crooks.
So the only thing blocking their access to the airfield is crooks?
Yeah. I think they're gang... I think the Forbidden Zone has gangs in it.
Right.
You can't drive around the Forbidden Zone. You can't drive around these roadblocks. I mean, one of them's just a bus.
Yeah. So it's a bit like the bridge crossing in Extraction.
It is rather, yeah.
So we get to basically there's a huge firefight. Temuera Morrison and Axel gets into so there's this huge fight, explosions are going on, the factions are fighting. He gets into this crane, where there's a crane driver, and he's like, Axel's like, how does this work? The crane driver's like, oh, this makes it go up and down. And Axel's like, what does that lever do? He goes, oh, that makes it forward and backward. And then he says, what does that one do? And then he knocks the guy out.
This guy was just working.
So...
At least he didn't kill him.
No, okay, so why didn't this worker notice the firefight that was going on around? All these huge explosions. He's just there working very happily. In fact, this dude, a random stranger, walks into his workspace and starts asking him questions about how everything works.
And he's very happy to answer those questions.
Answering them. He's living his best life in there. It seems he's oblivious to... It was so weird. Anyway, then he gets into this crane. Axel takes over the crane, and he lifts up this car. Barb Wire's bike has been sandwiched between this car and a forklift.
Yeah.
And she's, like, in a precarious position, and the bad Nazi is going to kill her. But Axel picks up this sandwich. Why? What was the purpose of lifting it with this crane? I don't know. Then they're in the air and they fight some more, and the guy...
why did he pick it up? I don't know, because he just...
Why did he pick it up?
I thought he was going to clonk the bad Nazi in the head with it, maybe.
I thought, why didn't you just stay on the ground and just walk up and shoot? Like, take up a gun from one of the other
I don't know if you read far enough, but someone gets killed with a crane in the Barb Wire comic. But I doubt that this is a reference to this.
Right. Okay.
And that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought the head Nazi was going to, Heinrich Himmler or whoever it is, he was going to get whacked with the crane, just like the character... got whacked in the comic. No, instead it just lifts the forklift in the air.
No, well, also he's in a forklift, so you can just walk up from the side and just shoot him. There's no window or anything there. Just open fire on the guy. You don't need to knock out this crane worker who's really not doing anything. He's just having a good time. And take over.
So we can have a silly action
So we can have a thing where he drops the crane and then.
Well, first he gets into a fist fight on top of the crane, Temuera Morrison.
Oh yeah, there's lots of fights. Yeah,
and then Barb. There's endless, tedious kind of like it's nothing. It's not at all like Extraction. It's just very very boring.
I had trouble staying focused on it. Let's say that.
Very. I guess it's competently shot, but it's not very interesting.
But finally, the guy is like. He gets a beat on her, the main bad guy gets a beat on her, and he's like, this reminds me of my favorite song, I Got You, Babe. Okay, I need to... And then she's like, don't call me babe, and then she cuts him loose, and the thing crashes and explodes. Like, there was so much fuel in this...
In the forklift.
In the forklift that... I can't believe the size... But my question is, he didn't call her babe. He said, this reminds me of my favorite song. Did he call her babe? I Got You, Babe.
Well,
was he saying the name of the song, or was by saying it, was that enough of calling her babe? Anyway.
You're giving this more analysis than it deserves. It's just a terrible way to set up Barb Wire's catchphrase,
yes,
which is "Don't call me
absolutely.
babe."
So, they get to the...
Why didn't he just say, like, "End of the line, babe"? Instead,
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
right. Why does he say, "This reminds me of my favourite song, I've Got You, Babe"?
A song from 60 years ago.
It's so silly.
So they have their farewells at the airfield, just like in Casablanca.
have to
She
get it.
hands over the lenses so that Cora D can get on the...
She was wearing them, that's where they were.
Yeah, she was wearing
She handed them over, maybe there's 2 sets. Anyway, she handed them over to Big Fatso.
Yeah.
And he looks at them,
Oh my God,
shakes...
we didn't talk about the grenade.
So in the handover, when he gives her cash card, which has $750,000 on it, incidentally, why is it a cash card? Why not just have it in cash?
I don't know, and we still have banks, and that's not Canadian
Also,
money for sure.
how on earth would you know that it had...
How can you
Big
trust
Fatso
him?
absolutely planned to double cross her from the very start.
Yeah.
He'd already called the Gestapo.
Yeah.
Much like the denouement, you know. And, so why on earth... So this is obviously a fake card. Why would he load a real card with $750,000?
Yeah.
Whatever.
But it does have a real, because he afterwards he says, when he lists off all the money he's getting, that's one of the things he lists is...
And I get the card. And I'm like, what do you mean you get the card? The card
Why
is
did you put
obviously
money on
fake.
there?
Why did you put money on this card when you were going to bank... I mean, if she'd asked for cash, I mean, at the very least, you would have... she would have seen the cash.
Yeah.
And then you got to keep the cash.
Yeah.
But instead it's a bank card, which could just be a piece of paper painted to look like a bank card.
Yeah. So, in that scene, Xander is supposed to handcuff her, and he secretly gives her a grenade behind her back.
Yes.
And she pulls the pin out and throws it randomly into the air. And it lands on Big Fatso's lap. But why not throw it at the Nazis? Why throw it in...
Well, she wanted them to scatter.
Wouldn't they scatter if she throwed it?
Well, she's surrounded. They're on all sides.
Okay.
I hate that I'm defending this.
Okay.
But they're surrounded on all sides.
Okay.
And she throws it in the air so everyone has to run because they
Okay.
don't know where it's going to land.
Okay.
And it hilariously lands right on Big Fatso's
right.
lap. And he goes, "Oh!"
Okay. So, I did like the very last line of the movie, which is when Xander Berkeley says, "I could fall in love with you," or something like that.
I think I'm falling in love with you.
I think I'm falling in love with you. And jokingly he says it, or cynically he says it, and she says, "Get in line."
One last snarky line.
Yeah.
"Get in line."
Yeah.
And then we have a snap zoom and the sound of gunshots.
Yes.
Snap zoom and then roll credits.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Oh, what's your trivia?
I've got plenty of, I've got some trivia.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So this film, a box office dud.
$4 million,
obviously.
I think it made.
A bit less, 3.8.
Okay.
Budget was 9 million.
Okay.
So it's not the big. Here's the thing: it's not one of the biggest. It's not the biggest dud we've seen. We've seen some massive duds on this podcast. It's only made back about a bit less than half its budget.
Okay.
Okay. Doesn't seem to have had an international distribution.
Okay.
As I said, just that's its domestic figure alone.
That's weird. That's weird to me because it seems like it would easily sell overseas. Very easily.
The article that I read, the long article in Premiere Magazine, which was called "Play It Again, Pam," actually mentioned as much that they expected it to do well overseas. Her obvious appeal as a celebrity, compared with Baywatch's weekly viewing audience of 1 billion worldwide, gives Anderson the kind of heft at the global box office that few stars of either sex can match. A fact not lost on the film's producers, Polygram Filmed Entertainment.
Yeah.
Polygram, this quote continues, Polygram is huge in Europe.
Yeah.
And with their strength in foreign distribution, and with Pamela in it, the numbers looked very good. And yet it doesn't seem to have had an international release.
It's so weird.
I guess because it flopped, and because it's a bad movie. Maybe they just pulled the pin.
No, but that's... Okay, so imagine you're a distributor from, I don't know, just name it kind of like France.
Yeah.
And you're looking for US releases to distribute in France. Wouldn't you just be like, okay, she's got the chest and the... By the way, I spent a lot of time staring at her waist. Because her waist is so thin.
She's wearing a corset.
I think I read somewhere it was like 17 inches I was
and she's wearing a corset as well in this. So it's cinching her waist.
Anyway, I was like, if you were distributing, it'd be like, okay, you could sell it on her body. You know, it doesn't have to...
It's a mystery.
Lots of worse movies do get distributed overseas. Right. So just based on the basis of sex or exploitation or something like that.
You're right, and it is a mystery. It is a mystery. Maybe we can solve it a little bit later, but it is a mystery. As I mentioned earlier, this had a troubled production with the firing of the original director.
Yep.
Apparently, he was pushing it in a direction the producers weren't happy with. He wanted an aesthetic... A surreal aesthetic, maybe. He wanted it to be a little bit more art house, a little bit more strange.
You know what? There's a shot in this movie, actually it happens lots of times, there's a lot of overhead shots where the camera's directly... And there's when Barb walks into the apartment with the John, for some reason the camera is over the doorway. Why? Why is it... How is that helps telling the story in any way to have the camera overhead?
It's because they just built the set.
It doesn't even add tension...
No.
To the scene or anything, which is what is supposed to be happening.
In that article, they're gushing about all the work they put into the set design. They specifically built that bar so they could do overhead shots. Maybe they thought...
I think the production's actually kind of good, like in this movie. I think that's
another thing about it. It's very workman-like production. There's nothing wrong with it. It's all quite well shot.
Yeah.
Quite well lit. I mean, it's just there's nothing wrong with the production. This is not Plan 9 from outer space.
No, absolutely.
And once again, I want to return to that. I think it seems like the producers wanted to be a bit more commercial. One of the set designers said about the firing of Adam Rifkin, the original director, "Sure, I was disappointed. Adam had a surrealistic vision and a very interesting view about where he wanted to take this picture. Now we're doing more of a music video thing."
Right.
And he said that. A more commercial picture, and it will be very interesting to see how these two visions will match up. Would this other version have saved the film and made it a success? It's hard to say.
It would have looked different from all those other movies we listed half an hour ago.
Good point.
That were coming out at this time.
Good point.
It's a funny thing, though, because I do gravitate towards this genre of cheap 90s sci-fi. All those movies, I mean, they're not good, but I watch... Yep. What was the one with Emilio Estevez and was it Mick Jagger in it, too? The one where he...
Oh my god, I don't know, but...
yeah.
Was it based on a comic?
No.
Too bad.
No.
Well, then it's outside the scope of our discussion. Back to trivia.
Yeah.
Troubled production, as I said. Pam Anderson suffered a miscarriage during production.
Jesus.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right. Okay.
She did a lot of her own... She did quite a bit of her own stunt work, apparently. So
are you saying she fell down the stairs kind of miscarriage, or was it the striptease?
I think it's just the strain of doing shooting the film.
All right, that's horrible.
Yeah. This film's failure killed... It seems to... So, first of all, they wanted to do more adaptations of Comics' Greatest World. Okay. I guess they're hoping for another Mask.
Ghost would have been... Maybe visually interesting.
Yeah, Ghost was probably in the pipeline, but this film killed any prospect of that. There was also a video game in development by Cryo Interactive.
Okay.
Also never came out.
Sure.
And of course the comic itself didn't have any more.
Yeah.
It ended shortly after this film. There's a connection with Barbarella.
Okay.
This is just... I found this in an article called The True Story of Barb Wire, Pamela Anderson's box office bomb, published just this year in February.
Okay.
In Esquire magazine. Written to coincide with a new documentary called Pam and Tommy. So she tells her Hollywood... There's some footage of her telling her Hollywood publicist, that she wanted to become a Jane Fonda-like figure. Someone who made good films and stood for something too. Barb Wire was supposed to be the first step on that road. Pamela says in episode 3 of this series, when Jane Fonda first started out, she was just this girl next door. Then she did Barbarella and she became this huge sex symbol, and then she turned around and she started doing all these serious Oscar roles. That was the career plan that maybe it would never have eventuated, but that was why she took this film.
But I mean, you look at Jane Fonda's performance in Barbarella and Pamela Anderson's performance in this, and it's like that was a pipe dream.
Absolutely. It's okay. I wrote down some of the funny reviews, but I don't think I'm going to read them. We'll just move on. Okay, so perhaps we should do our voting, because if we don't do our voting, we'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. and for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Okay, so the comic is a nay for me because I think it's just... I think the idea is good, but I think it's just... There's too much... It's put itself into a superhero universe and made itself generic by doing that. And as I mentioned Hitman before, that's a better read than this, and it's almost the same idea in a sense.
I agree. I'm also a nay. As I said before, I think Barb Wire is a likeable enough character, but this comic is just boring 90s crap.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, film.
Nay, but as I said, I do kind of gravitate towards this kind of thing, much as I do slasher movies. And often with those types of movies, like if I was to say Friday the 13th Part 4 or 2 is good, any other normal person would say this movie is a piece of crap. But I'm kind of latching on to little bits and pieces here and there. And there weren't enough little bits and pieces in this movie to be... It's not like Time Cop.
No.
No. There's not enough in there besides the crap, you know what I mean? So it's a nay, but I do want to say that despite her unlikability, I think there's a pressure to make characters likable, especially female characters likable, in an action movie, and I think it's not done deliberately, but it's almost admirable that they waited until her brother's death or the dance with the guy, and that's the most to actually try to make a character like that, a female character like that, I think is actually interesting, would have been good in a better movie.
Right.
Is, I guess what I'll say about it.
Sure, no, I'm inclined to agree, because Barb Wire's character in the comic is no-nonsense.
Right.
Is tough.
Yes.
As you say, it just hasn't made an effective transition into the film. I think it's partly a weakness of the writing.
Yeah.
We don't get enough moments to... We just get that one island of nice humanity, almost.
Yeah.
The dance, it's not enough. The rest of it's just this relentless grinding negativity.
Yeah. Great cast, though.
Yeah.
I mean, besides Pam, especially seeing Clint. Udo Kier is like... He's like the Jeffrey Combs. Like, he's one of those guys, whenever he shows up, you're like,
yeah, brilliant,
here.
that's my guy.
He's here.
Yeah. All right, so my vote, I also am going to say nay.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I want to talk a little bit about how bad was this film. Sure,
Okay.
this film is bad.
Yeah.
But how bad is it? This film routinely makes worst film ever lists.
I don't think it is the worst film.
Like, if you go to the Wikipedia page, you'll see that it makes reference to this is always appearing in top 10 worst films of the 90s, top 10 worst films of all time, top 100 worst films. This film is constantly appearing in worst film lists. Right, so this film tries very hard to be funny, and it's not funny at all. This film tries hard to be sexy, and it's not sexy at all. It reminded me of Veronica. Right. But it's not... But how bad is it? I read an interesting article that appeared in all places on ultimateclassicrock.com.
Okay.
And it was called Barb Wire, Good, Bad, or Just an Average 90s Stinker by Tyler Sage, and it also appeared this year in January. And this article made the point that this film, sure, it's bad, but it's no worse than a lot of the other movies that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's no worse, arguably, than Tank Girl. Tank Girl is also another film that had a lot of great people cast in it, but just had a weak plot.
Yeah.
You know? Judge Dredd we've mentioned.
Yeah.
Steel.
Yeah.
With Shaquille O'Neal.
We're going to get to that one. Yeah.
Batman and Robin. These are all contemporaneous films based on comic books.
Yeah.
Then there are others. I can quote from the article. And who could forget Johnny Mnemonic, starring Keanu Reeves. Battlefield Earth, a little later, that came out in 2000, with John Travolta. Wild Wild West, 1999.
Yeah.
Will Smith, Kevin Kline, Kenneth Branagh, and Salma Hayek.
I think that... I haven't seen that movie, but I think that's got a dead brain scanner in it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No, see, all of these films deservedly bombed, but none of them attract the opprobrium that this film attracts.
Yeah.
This article says the main difference seems to be that by the time Barb Wire came out, Anderson herself had earned a reputation for tawdriness. And Pamela Anderson has become she's tabloid fodder at this point, right?
Yeah.
And she's just married Tommy Lee. The sex tapes come out. people like to punch down.
Yeah.
And people are... I think when people criticize... Sure, this film deserves its criticism, but to constantly put it on these lists...
It's not as bad
when it's quite well directed, it's got some great characters... It's got some great actors in it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the sets. There's nothing wrong with some of the performances. There's nothing wrong with the direction, the production. And yet, there's no Plan 9 for Outer Space. We're getting this because Pamela Anderson had, by this point, a sleazy reputation, and people like to hate her. And
yeah, I think that might be what the reason is.
So that's my... So obviously it's a no for me, but that's my qualifier, to bear that in mind.
Yeah, no, it's...
And it's...
I might end up watching it again, much like I've watched every Friday the 13th a bunch of times. As bad as many of them are, there's bits and pieces here and there that I'm waiting for, so...
We still have adaptation, yay or nay?
There's a nay. So, we've got the blonde, who's mostly undressed, on the motorbike. We've got the blind brother. We've got the bar. But... She's not a bounty hunter. The bar's not the bar. It's, as you said, to me that's actually significant. To have that giant bar versus the little hole in the wall, which is like the Sunny in Philadelphia bar, or worse in the comic book. And the blind brother is not the armorer, which would be kind of, it's only, there's only surface stuff. It's missing a lot of important, and for her to just be be a bounty hunter running a bar from the comic, that would be enough. But to have her pretending to be a prostitute, because the way that scene plays out, it's like, you don't know why, you think she's just prostituting herself, because of the voiceover as well. It's like, oh, now she's a part-time.
She doesn't just work as a bounty hunter, she also works as a prostitute. And she has the license and everything.
Yeah. It's got a fake name on it, but it's...
And a fake date.
Yeah, and a fake date. A very fake date.
That guy wasn't very observant, was he?
It's a nay.
I am also a nay for the same reasons that you said, and also because it is the absolute worst adaptation of a classic film from 1942 I have ever seen.
You know what, though? The whole time I was watching that movie, I was thinking, why am I not enjoying the Casablanca references the way I enjoy the Hamlet references in Strange Brew? And maybe I was thinking of Strange Brew because of Canada Day as well, I don't know. But to me, the way that super lowbrow movie... maybe the reason is because that knows it's a dumb, lowbrow movie, and they're like, we're going to model this on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in Hamlet. That's going to be our plot.
Because
it's so... the core concept is so ridiculous, and this is like...
That's where
we're going to make a badass action movie that's going to be based on... But it's actually based on Casablanca, and it seems to be...
Because it's not self-aware. See,
Strange
Brew is self-aware, right?
Yes.
As you said, and this is already a comedy, a kind of surreal comedy. So it's fitting, Here it's just played straight.
Yeah.
There's no one's winking at camera.
Yeah.
It's like they literally just used a story that absolutely everyone will instantly recognize as soon as they watch the movie, and just play it utterly straight, like we wouldn't. No.
Yes.
Very, very odd choice.
So I couldn't figure out, should they have leaned into it more, actually named the name.
It's not like how Apocalypse Now is a remake of Heart of Darkness, or an adaptation of Heart of Darkness, by Joseph Conrad.
Yeah.
There's no subtext, right? It's just a straight
right.
rip-off.
You're right. I think that might be it. Okay.
Oh well. Kumar, I'm no good at being noble.
Okay.
But it doesn't take much to see that the complaints of two little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Someday you'll understand that.
Yeah. Okay, should we talk about next week?
Yes, please.
Alright, so next week we're going to stick with the blonde theme, and we're going to go back to Blondie.
Yes.
So there are 28 Blondie movies. We're going to do the first... I think what we're going to try to do is the first one and the last one.
Right.
So the first one was 38, and I think the last one came out in 1950.
Okay.
And they're about an hour long each, and I think they're mostly on, YouTube and stuff. You can find them. I think Tubi... I think Tubi has it with subtitles if you prefer some captions. But they're all quite fuzzy and grainy. I had trouble like finding them. But we've been for a year now almost. We've been like, how are we going to tackle these 28 movies? And I think the only solution is we'll just hit the first one and the last one.
We'll see how we go.
We'll see how we go.
We'll find out next week.
Yeah.
Kumar, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Rick, this is Major Heinrich Strasser of the Third Reich.
How do you do, Mr. Rick?
Oh, how do you do?
And you already know Herr Heinz of the Third Reich?
Please join us, Mr. Rick.
We are very honored tonight, Rick. Major Strasser is one of the reasons the Third Reich enjoys the reputation it has today.
You repeat Third Reich as though you expected there to be others.
Well, personally, Major, I will take what comes.
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Unofficially, of course.
Make it official if you like.
What is your nationality?
I'm a drunkard.
And that makes Rick a citizen of the world.
I was born in New York City, if that'll help you any.
I understand that you came here from Paris at the time of the occupation.
There seems to be no secret about that.
Are you one of those people who cannot imagine the Germans and their beloved Paris?
It's not particularly my beloved Paris.
Can you imagine us in London?
When you get there, ask me.
Oh, diplomatist.
How about New York?
Well, there are certain sections of New York, Major, that I wouldn't advise you to try to invade.
Uh-huh. Who do you think will win the war?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Rick is completely neutral about everything, and that takes in the field of women, too.